Hey everybody, it's Dr. Joe Gilgore, Mineral Area College again, and for another edition of Community College Presidents talking about community college. As I say in other episodes, we often talk as colleagues. We share ideas, we steal ideas, whatever, steal, borrow, whatever you want to call it, but often talk to each other about how things are going, just how we operate. And now more than ever, we're really more of a support group for each other as we check in and see how people are doing. So I thought we'd give you a glimpse of that as we talk about some things. And today, my next guest is Dr. Larry Johnson Jr. from Phoenix College. And Dr. Johnson, thank you for joining me.
Oh, so it's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. It's probably much warmer out where you are. It's like 50 degrees here. I'm assuming it's nice out there in Arizona.
Yeah, that's the benefit of Arizona. It's about maybe 70 degrees, so it's beautiful.
Well, I'm jealous. I do not like cold weather. I've lived in Missouri all my life, but the cold part I do not like. Well, it's Community College Month. That's not why we're doing this, but happy Community College Month to you, sir. But how are you doing? How are you holding up with everything that's going on?
It is an interesting time, but what I have shared with my team is that this has been an opportunity that has stretched us beyond anything that we could ever fathom. But emotionally doing well, physically certainly doing well, but it's causing me to really reimagine community college and how we support students. So I'm doing well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I'm glad to hear you're doing well. You and I knew each other a little bit before this interview. So tell me, for the people that don't know you, let's tell a little about yourself, your background, and a little introduction about Phoenix College.
Yeah, awesome. So I have been in higher education for 15 years, originally from Belgrade, Florida, which is in Palm Beach County. So I went to undergrad at Florida A&M University. All of my degrees, from my undergrad degree, my master's, and my doctorate degree, were all focused around English literature. And it helps me in terms of all the writing that, Joe, that, as you know, we have to do in our roles. But what was really important to me was the critical and analytical aspect of looking at text, because in our day-to-day world, we're having to think critically and decisive around how we support our students, how we engage the community, and how we really lead our institutions. So that's been a great experience for me. My college is Phoenix College. We are the flagship of the Maricopa Community College District. There are 10 colleges within the Maricopa Community College District, and collectively we serve 10,000. I serve 20,000 students. Collectively, we serve 200,000 students. And we are considered the oldest. We are celebrating our 100-year anniversary. We were founded in 1920. So we are really gearing up for all of the great centennial events and really sharing our story and really re-engaging our alumni. We have about 30,000 alumni who are actively engaged with the college, which is amazing. But the college serves a very diverse group of students. We have about 100 countries represented, 50 languages spoken. And our college is considered what we would call a historically or Hispanic serving institution, an HSI, where more than 55% of our students are Hispanic, and about 7% of them are African American, 3% of them are Asian American, and 3% are Native American. So we have a very, very diverse group of students, and we're in the central Phoenix, which is kind of very close to downtown. So we see students that are first generation, underrepresented, marginalized communities, and one of my roles is to make sure that we're eliminating any issues where equity is involved. And that is something that I really pride myself off with this college, because they are embracing that vision of equity and inclusion.
That's great. Yeah, that's amazing. And you are the fourth interview I've done that has a background in English. I didn't know that was such a theme. And my executive assistant would tell you she wishes I had a background in English, because you're right. All the things we have to write that she helps fix for me. That's it would definitely be better if my wife says the same thing, of course, too. She doesn't like that either. You and I kind of met through, really, I talked about stealing ideas earlier, and that's really how you and I met. Is I read an article in the Chronicle about young presidents of community colleges, and you were mentioned in there as being doing an undercover president, pretending to be a student and going into classes. You've done it a couple of times, I think. So,
yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to steal that idea from you, and it worked for me as well. But talk about what you learned and that experience.
Wow. Thanks, Joe, for mentioning that. It was very rewarding to really see from the lens of the student. And so often as leaders, we are making decisions, we're working with our leadership teams, and the student's voice is oftentimes absent. So I wanted to make sure that when I am really reaching a point where it's a decision that will impact students, I want to make sure that the student's voice is there. So I thought, what other better way to do that then is to sit in a classroom as a student, engage with other students in the classroom, engage with the professor, so that I can truly understand today's student, because today's student is totally different from my undergraduate experience. It's totally different from the first community college that I taught it in 2007, but it allowed me to see how students think. It allowed me to really understand what motivates them, what type of pedagogical practices engage them, and what practices do not engage students. So in that experience with being a student, I was able to see young men of color who just seemed detached. They didn't seem as engaged in the learning process. There were other students who were really engaged. And what it told me is that individualized instruction, that as even faculty members at a community college, that we have to learn how to employ, because we have so many differentiated learning experiences that we have to figure out, how do we engage all of the learners? There were students there who were blind. So how do you engage those students in the classroom? But what it really reinforces, that the community college is truly a democracy. We have all of the students who represent all walks and aspects of life. And that helped me to really advocate for students from in terms of equity. Do we have all of the resources that we need for students who are blind or students who have ADA accommodations? Are we engaging our minority male students? Because statistically, we know what the data says. They are disproportionately the student population who are not succeeding. They're not being retained. So it then really served as a catalyst to ongoing conversation with students after that experience, and forming what I called a student leadership council that just reports directly to me in terms of sharing quarterly, what are some things that we can do better as a community college? What do I need to know about your experience from the inception to applying to the college to the first year experience? And then what are some other things that we can do to better make sure that you are gaining the true college experience that will prepare you for transition to the workforce or transition into the four-year colleges and universities. So it really helped to provide more of a widespread understanding of how do we need to pivot as community colleges, because we're not just the trade schools. We know after World War II, everyone ran back, they were coming to get the trades, but that's not who we are anymore. We are truly comprehensive colleges who are preparing students to go on to four-year colleges and universities. So we have to be nimble and understanding that everyone in the class is not going into a CTE area, that we have to understand that there are students who desire to move on, and how do we still meet that need as well in all of the programming that we do across the college. So that's what it did for me.
Very well said. Thank you. And thanks for the idea. I don't know if
Yeah,
you had this, but you and I are about the same age, but
yeah,
I went to 3 back-to-back classes, and the instructor in the last class, said, what would you tell the president if he were here? And students said a few things here and there. And I learned a lot of great things that day, but she said, what would you say if I told you the president was right here in this room? And she said, and they started to point at me. And she was like, well, okay, yeah, that's him. And I stood up, I said, well, what made you think it was me? And they said, because I look old. The whole purpose of this thing, because we look young. But I guess when you're talking to like a 19-year-old, I guess, we do look old, I guess. But anyway, I don't. Was there ever a time in that you thought your cover was blown, or you thought somebody knew who you were?
some of the students were looking at me like, I've seen this guy before, because I speak at all the new student orientation. So some of the students did remember me. Some of the athletes remember me because I speak at their orientation as well. But many of the students did not know. And that was also an opportunity for me to connect with students. And it was a gap that I realized, even with many of the presidents who have been in their role 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know how valuable they see that experience is in terms of engaging with their students in that type of way. So I figure, I'll leverage the youth as much as I can to make sure that students know that I'm accessible. So when they come up to me on campus, they're giving me the fist pounds and all of that, and it makes me feel as if they love being here, but they also know that there's someone out there who listens to them. They send me DMs on Facebook and Instagram and all of the forms of social media about things like financial aid. I didn't get my financial aid. I screenshot it, send it to my team, and they quickly get on it. That's that just-in-time communication that I believe will reinforce that students will persist from fall to fall and fall to spring. So it's certainly helped me to develop a really rich relationship with many of my student leaders and the students on the campus.
Right. It's great to show that example as a leader for everybody else. There's some people that, think student engagement is really just for maybe admissions or an advisor or something. Really, it's all of us, so we can all contribute that. So that's really
Right.
cool. Now, you have, you worked just about an hour away from here, actually, at St. Louis Community College for a while. Was there a specific moment in your career, in your life, where you felt like community colleges was there? I mean, I know you talked about, access and things like this. Was there a specific moment that really told you this was right for you in your field?
Yeah, Joe, that's a really good question. I would say it was my mother. Before my mother passed away in 1993, she was working on her LPN degree. And I remember her going to class as an adult, trying to take care of three kids. She was a single parent. And as I began to move through my undergraduate experience and I taught my first adjunct course as an English and reading instructor, I saw my mother in all of those students. And I then determined, I said, you know what? This is the population I want to serve, because I already knew I wanted to be an educator on some, if either K-12 or at the collegiate level, but that really reinforced it because I said to myself, when students come to me as a community college student, they're still impressionable. I can still help shape their minds, and I can do it in a way where there's academic freedom. So it was my mother, and seeing her struggle, seeing her really, trying to take care of kids, working multiple jobs, and still working on her nursing degree. And that inspired me to really seek after the community college, not only taking a course in high school as a dual enrollment student, but when I was finishing my master's degree at Florida State, I said, okay, let me teach at the community college, Tallahassee Community College. Taught my first course, fell in love with it, and I saw students who I felt really needed to see that there's a man that has gone through similar experiences, has a mother who was a single parent, all of the issues that our students bring, low income, poverty. I was able to then convey that message and that story to my students to show them, look, I'm a product of a 10,000 population community where the HIV rates are high, all type of, any type of data that would disproportionately impact students of color, African Americans, Mexican Americans, because most of my classmates were Mexican. I can speak that narrative, and then I can advocate for them in such a way, because it's not where I'm reading data and I'm speaking about it, but it's a lived experience.
Yeah, really. And that, I came from a background of a single parent, and I did student discipline a lot. And I can remember sitting in my suit when I was a dean, and a student sitting in front of me that had been reported to the dean's office for something. If you have to meet with the dean, it's probably not a good reason if you're sent there. But you're sitting with me, and they'd say things like, "You don't understand. You don't understand where I'm coming from, my background." I'd be like, "Let me tell you a story." The levels of poverty and those kind of things. So, yeah, it's impressive to hear that. And that's what I hear kind of in a common theme in these interviews, is that when I ask, what drew people to community college, they always talk about how they fell in love. There was a moment they just fell in love with this. And I think that's really true. And those that don't understand community colleges or the experience don't appreciate that. But it is really a neat place to work. And I think that it seems like, what you're saying, and I agree with you, is that you want to change people's lives. You want to make a difference. It's really community college is the best place to do that.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think that we struggle with, and John, I'm sure that you recognize this as well. I saw a hashtag about remove the stigma. It is disappointing that in 2020, we are still trying to convey to parents, we're still trying to convey to this 21st century generation that community colleges are still valuable. And that is something that I am trying to use social media and different avenues to really convey the message of, yes, we're valuable, but you can leave a community college and have a wonderful career. Yeah, I mean, you can leave as a nurse, you can leave as a dental hygienist. There are so many different occupations that you can move into that will sustain you, that will sustain your family. And by the way, we're also providing the same rigorous genetic curriculum that will prepare you for a four-year college and university. And I think that with you and I really understanding our backgrounds and understanding what students deal with, I think we are in a place where we can really help to change the narrative about community colleges, not being an extension of high school, but to be that organization, to be that entity that can really propel these young people and many of these seasoned individuals who are returning to retool, that this is a valuable experience, that it's an experience that will really change the trajectory of not only their lives, but it will change the poverty. Even many of our students are coming today, they are in poverty, and that we can really help them do that through micro-credentials and certifications and so many other different suites of programs that we may offer. And I believe that we're doing a great job in attempting to do that. And we are a small, I believe, population, but I also believe that we're beginning to see more presidents who are around our age who get it and who understand that clarion call to equity and inclusion.
Right. And really, I mean, during this time especially, who do we need the most right now? We need frontline health professionals, law enforcement, all these things. Well, around here anyway, if you're in law enforcement or you're a nurse or something, you probably went through our college or a community college in Missouri, because those are the people we're producing. And so for anybody to second guess, the value of community colleges, well, that's who we need the most right now. And I think that's
Exactly.
it's becoming more real than ever, I think. And I agree with you that my first guest was Steve Robinson, the end CC stigma guy, and he can talk about that forever, of course. And I agree with him that I think we're starting to maybe turn the tide a little bit, but yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done on it. So
Yes.
speaking of that, of course, when I asked this question of him, his answer was the CC stigma. But we talk about, to change the subject a little bit, we talk about higher ed pet peeves, and they're, maybe I'm just a cynical young old man, whatever the students want to call me, but I have things that I feel like really annoy me in the higher ed world. Do you have anything that sticks with you that you wish you could change, or really gets under your skin?
Wow. I probably will defer back to, in part, the remove the stigma. When I hear colleges say, oh, here's one, a good one. So when I look at job applications, and because of this, we've had to change our job application. So we recently signed on with the Seal of Excellencia to get the seal, and that is for colleges who have a large number of students, and we want to really reinforce Latino student success. A part of that is diversifying faculty and staff to represent the students that we serve. And what is so interesting to me is when I look across higher education and I'm looking at positions to model, positions that I would probably need at my institution, there's always this line about embraces diversity, inclusion, and equity. And there's a line that says that, but when you look at the practices of many of those institutions, or if you have interviewed at many of those institutions and you ask the question about, well, how do you embrace diversity, inclusion, and equity? The response that you receive, I'm like, well, that doesn't really directly align with what I understand of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Equity for me is not that all students are coming to my class at the first day and that they have tuition, but equity is, do they have the basic needs? Do they have the technology to be successful in our classroom? So what do we need to do? Do we need to develop food banks? Do we need to have laptop loaner programs? Because yes, they're all there. They're all in the classroom. They have their books, but do they truly have all of the basic needs to be successful? So I oftentimes hear touted throughout higher education, we are a diverse and inclusive college, but then none of the faculty and staff look like the students that we serve. So that's one of my pet peeves that I have about higher education. But I believe that there's a shift coming, because I'm noticing in corporate America, every time I looked on LinkedIn, there's a new person that's been selected as a diversity, inclusion, and equity director. And so I'm hoping that that movement means that we now have applied a lens to truly understand not just black and white, but there's a LGBTQ plus community. There's our disabilities community. There are students who are Native American and other ethnicities, and they bring so much to our college. What are we intentionally doing to make sure that those populations feel valued, they feel that their voice is heard, and that they are appreciated while they're on campus? And that's faculty, staff, and students. So that would be a pet peeve for me.
Okay, a valid one. I think diversity becomes a buzzword and more lip service than action. And I think you're right. Seeing that
Yeah.
action is very important. Well, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I do want to hear and have everybody else hear how Phoenix College is responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and some things you're doing for your students, and really how your semester is going there.
Yeah, Joe, that's a great question. So like every other institution in America, we're certainly adopting to this virtual learning environment. We were able to get all our faculty and staff that did not have technology. We hosted laptop distributions not only for our faculty and staff, but we also held them for our students. We were able to refurbish more than 200 plus laptops, iPads, and we were able to get that to students through a very selective process. We followed up with them via email to just solicit what is it that they need. So we were able to successfully give out to date about 150 laptops. So that's one of the ways to support our students, our faculty, of course, our staff have done the same for them. But one of the ways in which I keep the college community updated is I send out weekly correspondence every Monday afternoon, and that's any updates that have taken place at the college community. Because we are in a district, there's so much communication coming down from our district office. So I try and really contextualize that and consolidate it into one document so that they're getting weekly correspondence where I'm celebrating successes, providing updates around any policy or procedure changes, such as with the conversation around, do we administer a letter grade or do we give a pass-fail grade? So I make sure that I keep the campus apprised of that. We currently only have essential staff on campus, like our police department and some of our maintenance and operations team. So we've really truly been able to move everyone to a remote working environment, provided the necessary training for them with WebEx and other, sorry about that, already, WebEx and other forms of technology. So we've done a great job in a very short period of time to get everyone into this virtual learning environment. But the question I ask of my team now is, let's create now a pandemic operational plan. And I would like all of the units, academic, student affairs, IR, IT, and so on and so forth. Let's bring all of the best practices together. What did we learn from this experience? What worked? What didn't work? What policies and what steps did we put in place? And let's develop guiding principles, because if and when this happens again, we're able to quickly turn on the switch and we can move directly into this environment. And we've thought about financial aid processes, we've thought about transcript evaluations, all of that has been discussed so that we have now a document and we have key persons in place and we can do a makeshift change at the drop of a dime. So those are some of the ways in which we're supporting the institution, but I'm also beginning to think down the line, if this happens again in November, do we have a manual, do we have a process in place that'll help us to move in a smoother fashion? Because what you probably noticed, we've had to change every day. I mean, we didn't have the conversation about, do we give students a pass or do we give them a fail? That conversation just really started about 2 weeks ago, and we were able to quickly assemble a team to include our faculty and staff to talk about it, and then we codified it, and now it's now a policy and procedure. So those are some of the things that we're doing as a college community and also as a district, but we're really leveraging what's happening with our CDC, what's happening with our governor, what he's stating of things in terms of social distancing. So we're making sure that we're also keeping our teams protected, and we're utilizing our health professions, our health care programs to also donate equipment, like many of the other colleges nationally, to some of our healthcare providers to help them during this time of need.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, that's really great, and I think I have so much more I want to talk to you about. We're out of time, but if you could, I'm going to give you the last 2 minutes, FaceTime, if you will. So I'm going to take it away, then I'll come in at the end.
Yeah. So I'll say that one of the things that I would provide in terms of, I would say, advice and in terms of some best practices is that I have truly learned through this process, and not that I did not do it before, but I truly have learned to lean on the experts at my college, my vice presidents of academic and student affairs, and every decision that is being made, even if it's coming from a district perspective, I've always included them, and I continue to include them in processes because they are boots on the ground. And sometimes I think we have because we're the leader and we lead the institutions, we are not decisive if we're not including all of the stakeholders. So if I could give any advice to other leaders, presidents, vice presidents, really leverage your teams, really look at your current structures, and then also think about how can you do things differently. If we were to remain in this remote working environment for the next 2-3 months, what is it that we can glean from this process to really reimagine how we offer courses, how we deliver instruction, any pedagogical practices? So I would say that is some advice that I would give during this time, just to really use it as a way to really reflect on who you are as a college and who do you want to become.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me and being a part of this project. I don't know where it's going or how long it's going to go, but I appreciate you being a part of it, and really all the help you've given me. I know that I'm a new president, and you're relatively new, but giving me your words of wisdom, and I know you've shared advice with me in the past too, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, stay well, my friend, and keep doing great work out there, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, thank you. Take care.